Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Each week, our hosts will be interviewing local, regional, and national business leaders to give you an inside peek into how they lead their business to success in the ever-competitive business climate.
Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. I'm Marilyn Ackerman, and I have a special guest today, Lance Cayko. I'm actually Lance Cayko's wife, and I could never have taken the last name Cayko because, just to tell you the truth, I am not edgy enough to carry that name out.
I thought it was just for business purposes, but sure.
I'm a little on the quiet side. I couldn't do it, but Lance can carry off the name Cayko. And yes, if you're new, it's Cayko as in psycho killer. It's spelled Cayko, but it's pronounced Cayko.
It's edgy.
It's very edgy. And that leads us to why I'm interviewing Lance today. The reason I'm interviewing him is because I see that Lance embodies so many characteristics of a successful person, and he has a lot of extreme behavior. And if you don't know what that looks like, I want to give you glimpses of it today because I think I can ask the questions that will have Lance reveal his extreme behavior characteristics that really do help him succeed.
Okay, Here we go.
Yeah. And so if you get something out of this, if you get a great insight into Lance today and what makes him a serial entrepreneur, please leave a comment if you're on YouTube. Please like it if you have a way to do that, or leave him a message. Let him know that you got a good insight today.
Sounds good.
Okay. So included in Lance's accomplishments are that he is co-owner of F9 Productions, a design build firm with Alex Gore, where they have how many employees, would you say?
If you count the construction arm, we have 11 employees total. 8 in the architecture side of things, which is F9 Productions. Everybody knows if they're a listener, is our architecture firm. We started it in 2009/2010. More or less, and we've grown it from just Alex and I up to 10 people at one point, and then back down to 8. We sort of cut the fat, so to speak, before another recession hits here. And then we have 3 people on our construction arm, which is F14 Productions, a separate company entirely. But combined, like Marilyn said, they do sometimes work hand in hand.
Yes. Okay. And he's also a lecturer at CU Boulder in the Department of Engineering, a co-lecturer with Alex Gore also. And he has 2 podcasts, Inside the Firm with Alex Gore, and of course this Monday Morning Coffee. And he's 39 years old. He's from Trenton, North Dakota. He is married to yours truly. He has 2 wonderful kids, 2 wonderful stepkids. They're all teenagers. And he is also an avid fisherman, and he hikes about 30 miles per week. And it's pretty extreme hiking. I mean, high altitude mountain hiking. And if it's winter, it's in the snow too.
Don't forget about the nonprofit.
And he runs a nonprofit community garden. And boy, he does so much there with keeping that garden straight. It has a
lot of weedy reminders. Get your weeds.
20 garden plots and 20 gardeners, something like that.
40 and 40.
40 and 40?
Yeah.
More extreme than I thought.
It's pretty extreme, right?
All right. So I want to preface this by quoting from a book about success that when I read this, it made me feel like I was reading a book about Lance. Okay. This is the book. It's called Edgy Conversations by Dan Walschmidt. Okay.
Okay.
And so in this book, here's how it starts. He says, you don't need another book on success. You don't. You already know almost everything you need to know about achieving success. Set goals, work hard, be persistent, and don't give up until you get what you want. It's all stuff that you could probably repeat in your sleep. The book goes on. He says, there are thousands of books about high performance. What is missing is the real-world, gut-wrenching discussions about the emotional challenges of success, a focus on attitudes instead of just actions. And we're going to talk about both attitudes and actions with Lance. It also goes on to say that that's a huge void. that these success books don't fill, because your actions will fail until you master the deeply personal aspects of your life that drive those actions. The hard truth is that success isn't a series of actions, it is an attitude. Success isn't about what you do, it's about who you are. So first, let's start out. Lance, I want to talk about how you don't make excuses for who you are and where you are. Now, I want you to tell the listeners first just about where you're from and just what that was like, where you're from.
Yeah. So I am from northwest North Dakota, which is a very sparsely populated area. Growing up, the town I grew up in, we always estimated it was maybe 500 people, but honestly, it was probably only a few hundred people. To really drill down on how small the community was, I was probably related to half my class, something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Marilyn jokes about this quite often. Like, I'll tell her just stories, and she'll be like, "Aren't they related?" Because she's been up there several times. But my graduating class was supposed to be 20. One person dropped. One person flunked out, so it was only 19. It's just a very small area. The closest town to us was Williston, North Dakota. That's where the big oil boom happened in 2008, 2009, also in the 80s, but the biggest one was 2008, 2009. And that town exploded from 13,000, and it was dwindling like below 13,000 when I was growing up. And now it's above like maybe 25,000 or something like that. But a very small area as far as population goes and density and even opportunities. And then money was always an issue. My mom and dad did as best as they could. They both work for people. My mom worked for Indian Health Services. So I grew up under socialized medicine, so I understand the dynamic there, the pros, the cons, all of that. And then my dad worked for his dad. He's a very loyal person. Marilyn would attest to that. He's just a very, very loyal person. And he just saw taking care of the farm and his dad as much more virtuous than going out there and being this super capitalist now that kind of like I like to think that I am and try to be an entrepreneur. But growing up in both in that environment, I really feel like since I'm such a contrarian, it pushed me to be the opposite of them. So multiple businesses, right? F9, F14, F12 was the developer. F11 is a book that Al wrote. The podcast is kind of its own company. Teaching at CU is its own thing. My nonprofit that I just started, and now the fishing channel, where I've actually ended up I make a couple $100s a month making videos, which is not a lot, but it pays for my gas anyway. And maybe a date or two with us. So yeah, is that kind of
I think that's a great explanation of where you're from. I think the main points I wanted to highlight in that was that you weren't raised by entrepreneurs, and what were the attitudes around a work? I mean, we heard about being loyal and maybe just attitudes about you get a job and you stay there. That's what you do. I mean, how would you say the attitudes were about work and employment?
Definitely that classic American Protestant work ethic was instilled in us. No matter what, if you're gonna do a job, do it right. And that often means doing it yourself, sort of thing. So very DIY oriented. Again, growing up between the farm where my dad worked, and then my mom's dad had a cattle ranch. So growing up in between those two places, like it's the West. It truly is like it's like the east part of the West is the way I like to think about it, right? Because Montana's right next door and we'd vacation there. And so that kind of rugged individualism was just part of everyday life. And you had to get up and do it because nobody else was going to do it for you. And then distance. I don't know if I've ever talked about distance, but like just being able to go places. Like if you wanted to go fishing, it wasn't as simple as, oh, hey mom, I'm going down to the park in the middle of Longmont where we live. Something that simple, right? And I'm just going to do that. It was like, nope, I'm going to ride my bike down all these weird trails along the ditch banks into the sort of wilderness along the river, and then carry the minnows for like two miles, to get to a decent fishing hole and that sort of thing. So it was just you learn to actually kind of like getting exhausted. And it felt satisfying.
Oh, okay. That's great. Okay. Let's talk about, so you're there, you're in a small town. I mean, if it's, you could even call it a town, really.
It's a village. It's not even incorporated. You're right. Yep.
A village. And let's talk about sort of the transition and maybe the first time you reinvented yourself.
Reinvented myself.
Yeah, reinventing yourself. Or would you even say that
I think that's a good
happened?
explanation. I don't think anybody's ever said that publicly, but I think that's an interesting way to think about it. Because I think so the first time would be I tried to, people who've been a long time listeners have already heard the whole, I tried to work with my dad on the farm for one summer. It didn't, I lasted about 2 weeks. I just didn't get along with my dad that well, and then the mosquitoes and all of that. And I just didn't like the line of work. And so if anybody's thinking like, he couldn't handle it, he's just saying he was all about the hard work, now he can't handle it. It's like, nope. Then I went and called his best friend who was a contractor, and we tore off a roof and put it on in the same day. We did 80 roofs that summer in like blistering hot, humid North Dakota. So the first time that I reinvented myself was based on that, doing that work with that contractor. And that was, I think, when I finally started my own first little business. And that was the true, one where you could look it up in the state records and everything. It was after my first year in college. I went to North Dakota State College of Science first for a building construction technology degree. And it basically teaches you how to be a carpenter, kind of a general contractor, more or less. And you learn the basics of like plumbing, electrical, mechanical, and stuff like that. Like you could run a crew, residential wise for sure. Maybe commercially you need a little bit more experience. But I came back that summer, and I just decided to find my own work. And so I put out one little ad in like every town that's small in America, I feel like still has these little magazines. They're like, it's like Tidbits or something. It's called like, that's like a little pamphlet. Mm-hmm. I took out an ad. I think it was like $3 or something like that. And it was, I just described myself. I was like young, smart, sober, handyman for hire, and then I was like Cayko Construction LLC or something like that. Sure enough, I got a call. And I got a call from this lady who owned a trailer. It was her rental, and she just needed some steps made, and I just did a really good job. And I went out there and I built these steps, these wooden steps. I think it was like back in the day I charged like $250. I think I made like maybe 75, And then because she liked my attitude and all of that, then she had me redo her art studio in the back of her house. And I redid the whole thing. I painted it, new trim, built some shelves for her, redid this cherry wood floor, which actually turned out really fantastic. And again, she just was like thoroughly impressed. And that's when it really clicked for me, like the power of and the freedom that you're afforded if you're your own boss and you're an entrepreneur. And it was like, oh my God, sky's the limit. Like all I have to do is convince people. I know I can do the work. All I have to do is convince people to hire me. Mm-hmm. And once I'm hired, then I just execute.
Ah, yeah. You had me at sober.
Sober painter, still a really good idea, everybody out there listening. You'll crush.
Okay, no, that's I think that's very insightful. That is definitely about who you are and
Can I say about the second time? I mean, you got me kind of intrigued by the whole thing.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So, finished up trade school, and at the end of trade school, we were building. Your second year, you build a house, and you do it from foundation to the last nail in the roof, last nail in the floorboards, all that. And there was a set of. They were literal blueprints too. So I know some architects. We don't do blueprints. We do construction docs, whatever. They were actual blueprints, and I was just looking through them, paging through them, and I was like. I was just fascinated and like I could not understand. I was like, well, why did they design it like this? Like, why did they decide the bedroom should be 10 feet wide or the door should be this big and like the windows here and all of these sort of things? And then also finally, at the end of that 2-year stint at North Dakota State College of Science, it was like, oh, I like school. Finally. Like, I love school. And I actually figured out how to monetize it because, like, that's just a reoccurring theme in my life, apparently. Is like, I got to figure out how to make money off of everything. And it's not that I'm this big greedy person. Like, I think Marilyn would agree. Like, yeah, we live pretty frugal. Like, we're not out there. I drive a used car. There you go. How about that? Yeah. I have the same clothes generally all the time. So I found out I love school. I figured out how to monetize it, and I applied to North Dakota State University. Got accepted into the architecture program, the first level, and then had to compete to get into the ultimate program where they draw it down from 350 to 50 students. But that's when I reinvented myself for the second time, and all of a sudden it was like, all right, I'm going to be an intellectual. Instead of this blue collar thing, like, I just thought, what if I could wear both hats? Like, why can't you be the type of person that could speak with all of the tradesmen out there, literally pick up a hammer and say, like, look, here's how you hammer a nail. And then at the same time, go pull out the drawings and be like, oh, by the way, here's how I drew it and specified it. And then just make everybody happy, and then yourself happy, and more money and more freedom and all of that kind of stuff. And it was the right decision because then I did go on this very long intellectual journey. It was easily one of the most fulfilling times in my life by far. Those 5 years, because I just fell in love with going there mentally and doing all those exercises, which is all quantitative reasoning when you're doing architecture work. Like, it's very quantitative. It's bigger than just, your standard math. Like, it gets into that extra algebra kind of calculus level sort of trigonometry thinking. So much so that I almost went to MIT, and because MIT ended up recruiting me in my 5th year, which is our master's year. They flew me out there, and one of my professors, thank God, Mark Barnhouse, said, I get that they're recruiting you, and he goes, but I bet you wouldn't even expect me to tell you this, but you need to go practice. He's like, you can always go back to grad school.
Oh, you need to go practice architecture.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he was right. And I'm glad I didn't go to MIT because I think I'd probably end up, I don't even know if I'd be in Colorado, right? I wouldn't be pursuing now this new kind of passion about trying to fish for a living and stuff like that. So yeah, that was the second time. And then it just keeps happening.
Yes, that's quite a remarkable one, from blue collar to intellectual. That's
first person in my family with the bachelor's, first person with the master's, and I don't know if the next generation will even go there. We'll see.
We will see, and we'll. All right, let me ask you another question. So Lance, here's a statement from this book that makes me think of you. Okay, the statement is, "You win more when you fight more." So practically speaking, getting up earlier means you have more time to conquer the world. Simply getting up 1 hour earlier every day for 50 years equates to an extra 2,281 extra business days, or 6.25 years of conquest. So Lance, another time in your life I'd like to talk about, which relates to this, is when you were getting your architecture license. Okay, so just tell us the main things that were going on in your life for those few months. Just, there was a lot going on.
Oh man, yeah, that was a tough time. So that was 2015? We weren't building the house, were we?
No,
because
the house.
I stamped the house. Yeah, so it was like 2014. It was 2014. Yeah.
Okay.
Because we built the tiny house at the same time.
Yes.
So here's what was going on is the garden hadn't turned into my own nonprofit yet. So that was, having a garden and both at the house and then at this community garden, I was still leading the garden. So I just want to kind of start the framework there of like, okay, I was still doing that. I was teaching at CU Boulder. My ex didn't even live in Colorado, so I was 100% raising the kids on my own full time.
Yeah, what do you think their ages were then?
In 2014, they would have been about 10 and 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, Kai was very small still.
Yep.
Kaya was still, yes, because Kaya was still going to like a private kindergarten because we didn't have public kindergarten in Colorado yet. So
right, and we were not married at this point. We were dating.
We were dating pretty heavily, so I had to entertain her.
Okay, so I'll just remind you. So yeah, you were studying for your architecture
and building the tiny
licensing,
house,
building the
and
first
filming
the first tiny house, and filming the HGTV television show that you were featured on. You and Alex, and you had your F9 business.
And I was remodeling my house that you sold me.
Remodeling your house. Yep.
Yep. Gutted it and then remodeled it.
And the 2 kids. So this was I'm just in awe of that time in your life. And that was such an extraordinary amount of things that you were doing. I mean, so let's talk about, I want to talk about extreme discipline is what I'm getting at with the getting up early and how you accomplished, how did you accomplish all those things during that time in your life? And I want to talk about getting up early and what did you do? What was your routine at that time?
One thing that everybody people ask me is like, how do you do it all? And I say the first answer I tell them is I say, even now, I schedule everything. I schedule dates with my wife. Like we schedule everything. So we even scheduled this podcast. So I think for me, it's always started there of like, I've always kept a pretty tight calendar of events. And anybody that wants to interact with me, like, hey, like I can be flexible if you give me some time to plan for it and everything. So with that kind of framework, then the other component that starts that kind of starts the thing off correctly, I think, is like waking up very early and becoming a morning person and getting in a routine and keeping that routine through discipline. And so I would get up around 5 a.m. I still do. And every day before the kids got up, before I had to myself start getting ready, before I even touched anything F9 wise, from 5 to about 7 would be my study time. And then on the weekends too. Because I think there were several times where you wanted me to go do something. I was like, no, I'm studying. And I would just flat out turn her down. Like, no, I'm studying. I have to study. And my goal was to take one test every 30 days. I've talked about this on the main show on Friday too, if people want to go back and understand what it was really like. But I was studying so hard and taking it so seriously that like eventually I got some like ulcers in my stomach. Mm-hmm. There was one time we used to take the kids to Wahoo's Fish and Tacos because it was, here we're living frugally. We used to take them there and we would eat each for like $10-15 and then the kids would eat for free, whatever day that was, Thursday or something. And then that would be our date and that was it. But yeah, and then the other thing I would do, so besides just waking up early, but I had always kind of done that. And since, having kids was a big transformative moment for me. I would wake up early with the kids and I would just be a morning person. And then even before I started studying though, when I started F9, it was waking up super early and doing more work than everybody else was doing by the time they even started work. And I was just like, I'm just going to outwork everybody. Like that's all I'm going to do is I'm just going to outwork everybody. There might not be a lot of work, but I'm going to be hungrier and more persistent and more disciplined than anybody. And then it's paid off. Like it always pays off. I mean, I just don't see, I've never heard anybody say that like, oh, I was in a positive routine, a positive disciplined routine for X amount of time and it didn't pay off. Like, have you ever heard that in history? Like, it seems like common sense once you say it out loud and everything.
Yeah, that's true. So that's your routine, getting up very early, and that it got you through that time. And now you're still doing a lot. Tell us, I think a lot of people do this kind of routine Monday through Friday or Monday through Thursday. I get up at 5 and do all these XYZ, all these things. But I want you to tell your listeners what you do on Saturday and Sunday.
Same thing.
Yes.
Get up early. And everybody also has heard this too, hopefully on the show, is like, I don't really drink much of anything anymore. I will have a glass of wine or two now, maybe on a Saturday night date with Marilyn, but that's it. And other than that, like, so that has sort of like, for me, it has taken about 10 years. It made me feel about 10 years younger again, because I remember being able to get up no problem super early in the morning when I was like 25, early 30s, that sort of thing, and having that kind of energy and everything. So like on the Saturday and Sunday, it's the same thing. Like, obviously, if I'm not like having some wine on the weekend, I'm still pretty much in week mode. So now I'm getting up that early, and now I'm like, okay, let's say I get up early on a Saturday. It's like, great. I got up on a Saturday. I'm going to pre-schedule all of the loose ends that I had on Friday that I wasn't able to do because I was cutting the podcast, running around, whatever kind of business stuff at the end of the week. I'm going to pre-schedule all of those emails to go out using like the timed system that there is on Gmail and everything. And I'm going to be ahead of everybody for next week. Like, by the time people get up on Monday morning, they're going to be like, holy cow, Lance Cayko has already emailed me at 5 a.m. on Monday. This guy's already and they didn't even know, like, oh, he already did that. He already did that on Saturday. Then on Sunday, it's like, oh, great, I'm up that early again. In the new sort of scenario, it's like, oh, maybe I've already cut half of the next fishing video and have that kind of queued up and ready. Or I am writing articles on Newsbreak for the firm and hopefully getting inquiries through that. But it's just always constantly staying ahead with and doing things that are going to turn into positive, profitable things, and just kind of expand my reach as a professional, as a human being, and just you put positive stuff out there, and it seems like it comes back.
Oh, absolutely. And for people listening, I mean, you might be thinking, well, that doesn't sound balanced, right? It might not sound very balanced, but I wanted to tell you about, what I read in this book that reminded me of Lance again, this edgy conversations book, was that it's about balance. Like, so extreme behavior, it isn't balanced. So, yeah. And this book is saying, stop trying to be a balanced person, because balance doesn't work. It's fairy tale unicorn dust sold by life coaches to guilt you into thinking you need to figure out a way to be a little of everything, when nothing could be further from the truth. Because balance actually avoids extremes, and extremes are where you can find breakthroughs. Yeah. So that this reminded me of you. And if you want to be successful, it takes doing more and a lot more. And Lance, I wanted you to tell us, well, about an extreme situation in your life and a breakthrough that would have resulted from that extreme situation.
The development.
Yes. Okay.
The development was, one of the hardest things that I've ever done. I know one of the hardest things that Al's ever done, but for me specifically, working 80 days in a row with only one day at like day 40 where I just physically couldn't go. I physically couldn't do it. So that's why I say it was 80 days in a row, because I was just sick, and Marilyn knows when I was sick. I just worked myself to the bone. That was the hardest thing ever. We were on, financially, it got very scary at the end. We pulled through. But now what it's allowed me to do is, if I go look at the assets that I own because of it, the amount of advice that people ask me for, sort of the clout that Alex and I have because we've wore that hat, and then the fact that I can bring clients into literally where we're sitting right now in the office, and they say, oh, is this your development? And sometimes they say that, and sometimes I just tell them. And show them all of the details and everything like that, and what we did, the kind of confidence that it gives them to hire us. It's just, it's kind of full circle, going all the way back to those stairs that I built for that lady. It's like, oh great, now it's even easier to convince people to hire us. Perfect. All we got to do is execute. Like, that's it. That was the hardest part, is getting people to hire you, right? So for me, that was the most That was the most extreme professional. That was the most extreme thing I've ever done in my professional life, for sure. The most extreme thing I've ever done in my personal life was raising the 2 kids for those 3-4 years by myself, and being completely broke. But it just, God, I was so happy. I was so happy. Like, life was simple. It was simple because you didn't have all these options of things to do. And so it was kind of provided like this framework of like, now I'm going to find the free stuff to do. And it's going to make me concentrate on the important things of life. Hey, let's make cookies together. Hey, let's go to the garden together, kids. You guys can pretend that the wheelbarrows are like things you can drive. Stuff like that. Going to the farmer's market and picking out fresh produce, when we could afford it. Just going to making popcorn and going to get a DVD when we used to have DVDs from Redbox and having a movie night with the kids. Like, that was, and it just made me so much more tolerant to stress and trying to handle so many things that it's just not, I don't get really burnt out on tackling all of these businesses and nonprofits and teaching and all the other stuff.
Oh yeah, the
juggling all the balls.
And juggling the parenting balls really makes it so you are just completely surrendering to.
I think it prepared. I think it prepared me for employees. I'm not saying the employees are children by any means, but it just helps you. Children press your buttons. So not only I think it helped me for employees, but it helped me for clients. It helped me for like sub-consultants and consultants and just people, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Like, people are going to push your buttons even if they don't mean to. They're going to push you to a stress point, and it's like, well, I got to stay calm. Like, what is getting all angry and upset going to be, about something like that?
Yeah, and I know, and just so people know, when you're talking about raising your kids, that was when they were about 2 and 7 to about 6 and 11.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. Well,
not the easiest, because they say that like at 7 is when they become. They say when your kids turn 7, the youngest turn 7. That's when you mostly get divorces, because then they're on autopilot, or they're mostly on autopilot, and then all of a sudden you turn back to your spouse and you're like, oh, I forgot about you. Oh, I forgot about you, and then the fighting starts or whatever. Yeah,
but no, you had a 2-year-old. You were like having to get her dressed. Just like that's not autopilot at all.
And again, this is not a poor me story. I'm just telling you like. So I'm really thankful for those 2 struggles, 100%. I post on Facebook at least once a year, like some kind of memory will pop up or whatever with my kids, and it'll be, oh, how about this? So what I used to do for them is there used to be like I used to play leprechaun. So like when St. Patrick's Day would come around, I would go to the dollar store and like make like a fake pot of gold and like put the get like finger paint and like make little leprechaun prints all around, and like they'd wake up and like the leprechaun came. So like little tiny stuff like that. So anyway, I'll post like that memory once in a while on Facebook and be like, this is the happiest time of my life. Like, I'm not unhappy right now. I'm just saying I like to recognize how broke and how big of a struggle it was, but at the same time the happiness level was still way up there. Just so it reminds me to like stay grounded and not get over my skis.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about, there's a chapter in this book, Edgy Conversations, another one that reminds me of you, and it's titled Extreme Differentiation. So a quote is, "It's your obsessive compulsions, your passions, the things that set you apart that produce breakthroughs, not your talent to fit in." And so I want to talk about your obsessive compulsion that sets you apart. What do you think it might be? Tell us what you think it might be.
Well, I think it changes, and I think you've seen that, and that's okay. I hope it's okay. There's the obsession of starting F9. Well, I always tell people this is like, if you're going to start a company or hire an employee, it's a service-based company like ours, then I think you need to have like some sort of a rule of thumb in place, and that is like, I either need a steady flow of work, and it could be like you're drafting for another architect or some big corporation. You're doing Taco John's after Taco John's after Taco John's or something like that. Or you have 3 new houses and you can just start that way, right? My obsession when we started with F9 was, again, I'm going to get up. When I was working for this other firm in Boulder, when I first moved here, before we started F9, I would get up at 5 and I said, I'm going to outwork everybody. And I am going to, I see that there's not a big supply of these like furniture models that were built in Revit. It's a CAD software, and there's like architects need these because we need to do renderings with them. Well, there was none of those out there, so I would get up at 5 and I would make furniture families and I would put them up on turbosquid.com. I did that so consistently and so prolifically. I wasn't making a ton of money off of it, but I got noticed. I got noticed by one of like the senior manager at TurboSquid or something like that. And then that's what led to all of the CAD content and BIM content that we built on ArcCAT. And then that laid the groundwork for starting F9. So that was like an obsession.
Yeah, it sounds like it, yeah.
And that's what led to starting F9. Another good example would be like, I was really into politics. In 2016, right? It was Hillary versus Trump, and I was very, very skeptical of Trump. I think obviously a lot of people were and still are, but I was so skeptical because I knew about the bankruptcies and not paying subs and all that other stuff. I was just like, what's this guy going to do? Get in there and pretend like he's a fiscal conservative and he's just going to blow the budget? And I was like, and everybody hated Hillary. That's like most people hated Hillary. Just, come on. So they were both these very polarizing figures. And it was like, oh, there's this opening for the Libertarian Party. And I went and saw Gary Johnson in Boulder. He taught at CU Boulder. And I was like, you know what? I'm 33 or however I was. It was a younger 30s. I was like, I'm making okay money. I think I have some extra time. I'm going to get involved. Like now it's my time to get involved. Like I'm an adult. I have an opinion. I own a business, all this other stuff. And then I got completely obsessed with it and eventually ended up with like a couple million followers in my pocket because I was one of the lead admins over at Being Libertarian, who has almost 1 million followers on Facebook. And then it ultimately led to like me making money by making memes for like a candidate. His name was Roger Barris and stuff like that. So like that was another one. And then it ultimately led to no political victories, but a bunch of friends. And Marilyn has met many of them. They're very down-to-earth, good people. And then I finally had like my local consortium of friends in Longmont and beyond, like in Colorado. And it kind of completed that part of my life for me. But it all happened just because I became obsessed with like, I'm gonna try to make the best memes out there and get like these crazy reactions, you know. And sometimes Marilyn would be like, did you make any good memes? Just making casual conversation? No. I'd be like, oh yeah, that one reached like 10 million people.
Yes, the numbers, it was really staggering. Yeah. And so this leads me to another question. This is a quote from this book too about one way to push your limits is to stop worrying about what people think of you.
God. Yeah.
So I will tell you, Lance does not worry about what people think of him.
I don't even have to say
it. I just wondered, give us an example in some aspect of your life about someone, when someone or some group just they don't like you and how this affects things and what what has happened because of this.
I really love the Michael Jordan story where he was, if everybody remembers, I think he was a junior and he didn't make the team, or a sophomore, he didn't make the team, he didn't make varsity. And then he had a chip on his shoulder. He had a big chip on his shoulder. So then that whole summer he played basketball like crazy, and then he made his senior team or whatever. And then everybody knows who frickin' Michael Jordan is, right? So that always resonated with me as a kid. And so one of my high school sweetheart, her name was Kristen. She had a family friend. Her mom was friends with a sort of a distant cousin of mine, her mom. And her mom once told her mom that Lance Cayko is nothing but trouble. He is nothing but trouble. That boy isn't going anywhere. And I will never forget her saying that. And I had a giant chip on my shoulder because of that. I still do. And because I'm like, look at me now. Like, you can say all of those things, but how poor was you reading the cover of that book and what was inside of that book? And like, you go look back at the class, and now I'm going to just brag, is like, you go back and look at the little tiny high school class that I graduated from, like, there isn't anybody that sort of touches what me and Al do every day. As far as just the recognition, the success, all of that kind of stuff. So that's who I point to a lot. So thanks, Barb.
Thanks, Barb. Okay.
So I do kind of care what people think about me, but it doesn't make me sad.
Yeah.
It makes me mad. And then I always turn that anger. But again, it's relating back to Michael Jordan. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what Michael Jordan did. All of these people who feel slighted. Elon Musk was never. It was Ford got invited to the White House. GM got invited to the White House for the electric vehicle stuff. Elon Musk, no. And now look what Elon Musk is doing. Now he's taking over Twitter. Now he just tweeted about 2 hours ago. We're recording this on, what is it, May 19th, I think. 15th, 16th, 2022. He just tweeted, I used to vote Democrat, now I'm voting Republican. Like, you piss off the wrong people and they turn that anger into like, I'm going to conquer, that's the way that I think, if you can turn it into conquering positive energy. Because I think he's doing positive things. I'm not saying Republicans are the end all or anything. I'm just saying, look what happened now. You have one of the smartest men on earth literally taking down, like, basically the corporate press and exposing Twitter for the fraud it is and all of these things. Yeah. That's what you got.
Yes. Okay. Oh, I would like that answer. Okay. And tell us let's talk about differentiation. And how maybe another way, because I know there's a lot of ways that your company is different than others out there for the architecture and the design build. So let's talk about just one way about how not only not being afraid if people don't like you, but not being afraid to be different and how that can work for you. Yeah.
A couple different instances. So when Al first moved here, a wholesome little Al who who when he was a freshman in college wouldn't go out and party because he was reading the Bible in his dorm. Oh, I don't even think you knew that.
No, I didn't.
Why I'm setting this up is because then wholesome Al, Minnesota nice, moved down to Colorado to join his best friend Lance to start F9. And one of the first commissions he got was a pot shop.
Oh, okay.
In Boulder. So we've always been not afraid to do that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Go after the kind of projects and clients that people won't take on, and that are a little edgy, that are different, that maybe even especially when we first started out, we realized that like there's a huge opening in the market down here in Colorado for designing stuff for people who are like low to middle class. Mm-hmm. Like they can't afford these highfalutin, pretentious Boulder architects with the thick black rim glasses and all of that stuff. But there's a huge segment of society that still needs design work, that deserves design work, that deserves like the dignity that it can bring to a house. Like even if what if it's like, oh, they need an ADA ramp. The mom's on disability. The son is working like 2 jobs to keep everything going and take care of his mom. But Boulder Architect won't hire them or won't work for them. Mm-hmm. Well, they still need drawings for the city and all of that. We'll do it. We'll do it. We'll serve that niche. And so it was like, okay, we're setting ourselves up for that sort of a challenge of how do we serve a wider audience than most architects will. And it was like, well, we got to kind of go all the way back to the where like we make the bread, so to speak, or make the cake, dig back into the software that we use to design everything, and we need to make it so that we have a template to work from. Go to RevitRocketShip.com, check it out, and make it so that we are basically like super efficient. We can beat other people in terms of how long it takes us to draft just because of the way the template is set up. And then the tiny house, right? We took out a $40,000 loan to build that thing with no idea if we were going to be able to rent it, no idea if we were going to be able to sell it. We knew we needed to do it. The universe was pushing us in that way because we started that Blake's Tiny House for the website. We got all these hits and like TV producer after TV producer, and then Al landed us on that TV show, and we just jumped and went for it. And then it landed us. We got an International Architecture Award. You could say we paid $40,000 to be on TV every 2 weeks for 2 years, because that's what it amounted to. Because that's how often the episode would air. And then, and then that landed us the Subaru tiny houses, which then made it so we had enough. Which again is another extreme project because it was just nonstop working. Very, very difficult to build those things. Marilyn knows. That was after we built our house, so she knows when I would come home and all that, exhausted from Louisville. But then that led to the development, and then because we were able to buy land, and Marilyn was part of that transaction, so she knows. And then it led to the extreme development of building that and working crazy.
Yeah. So that tiny house was very different. There was nothing like that tiny house that existed. There wasn't. I don't even think that there was an upscale tiny house existing.
There was no luxury division of it yet.
Yeah. Okay. So that was very different. Yeah. Okay.
And can I just say something?
Oh yeah.
One thing that she's told me multiple times too is she's like, everything's got to be different, huh? It's like, why does everything got to be different?
I wouldn't have it any other way.
Because it's boring.
I know. It would be life as an adventure with Lance. I wouldn't have it any other way. So, okay, another thing in this book.
Except he wears black all day, every day. So
he looks really good in navy. I just don't understand how he doesn't see this.
And then every once in a while, I'll wear like a colored shirt.
Oh,
you should be like, huh?
Once in a while. Okay, sure you do. Okay. So another part of this book that reminded me of you was when he says it's about no sick days. The day, this day is not even in your head. Every day matters. The challenge is to do what is hard and noble and right when you are sick and tired, when you don't feel like doing anything at all. So I will attest that Lance does not have sick days. So what we've been together 9 years. He doesn't have sick days. He has sick hours. That might be the most. And those are rare, and I just mean a few hours. That's really rare. So, yeah, I just wanted to bring that to your viewers' attention because it's a very extreme thought and behavior too. Anything you want to say about that?
Exactly. So, like, just to reemphasize, the one day I didn't work in the 80-day stretch in doing the development, that was. I just couldn't work. I mean, it really did. It was so like that level of sickness was pretty extraordinary for me because before that one sick day and after that sick day, I was still sick, but I was still working. And the one thing that kept me going was when Kanye West came out with his album Ye, and it was like a gospel album. And I would just literally listen to it religiously, and I would just talk to God, and I would just ask for strength, and that's what kept me going. And that's how I was able to, if Bill McCarthy's listening to this, Bill, that's how I was able to install the kitchens, all the cabinets by myself. And then, so now when you ask me, hey, how the hell did you install a whole kitchen, 8 of them, by yourself, one person? And I go, oh, there you go, a little divine intervention.
Oh, yeah. The kitchens are on the second floor, too. There's a lot of stairs. Yeah, so it's just remarkable that you don't have sick days, and I just wanted to say that. So Lance, knowing what you know now, if you could go back in time, what is one piece of advice you would give yourself when starting F9?
I would just reassure myself that everything's going to be okay, and that it's okay that you're working this hard, and don't feel guilty, because you will have time. Time will open up a little bit more for you, and don't feel like you're cheating your kids out of time or anything like that. Know that like you're going to hit points later on and there's going to be points in your life where you're like, guess what? I'm taking every Wednesday off this summer. I'm going to go hiking in the mountains with my wife to catch some trout, and then we're going to come home and go to bed. And like, it's okay. It's okay to work that hard and keep the discipline. It's all going to pay off, and don't sweat the small stuff.
Oh, good words. Okay. And so I hope that, if everyone's gotten something out of this, they will, more of an insight into Lance Cayko, an insight maybe into yourself. Let him know what it is. Because I want to share with you that Lance loves hearing from his viewers and listeners, and I know it makes him really happy and fulfilled. So Lance, how can people find you?
They can just go, you know what? I need more followers on Twitter. So it's just, my handle is @LanceCayko. I've actually been tweeting a little bit. I just reply to people. The other day I got Peter Schiff to reply to me. I don't even think I told you that.
No.
It's pretty hilarious. Peter Schiff, super famous economist. He's got like 700,000 followers. Anyway, I've gotten like Joe Rogan to reply to me, Bill Burr. LinkedIn is a good one too. You can connect with me there. Just don't spam me with your insurance. You want to sell me insurance. You want to me to work for you, or whatever the spam is on LinkedIn lately. And then you can always email me at lmc@f9productions.com. And if you really search hard enough, you could probably find my cell phone on the internet.
Thanks so much, Lance.
Thank you.